hi everyone. I'm delighted to invite you to this episode of GTC Insiders, where we bring really the market experts shaping the industry. And I'm delighted to say we're being joined by one of probably the most famous ones in our space, Eddie DeCurtis. So with that introduction, Eddie, comes a bit of pressure. So perhaps you could introduce yourself, a bit of background, and your company.
Oh, hi. No, James, it's a pleasure to be here. And hi to everybody who's going to be watching this. I'm Eddie DeCurtis. I've been in the wireless telecommunication technology space for 30 years. I did a number of things throughout my career that I'm very proud of and very excited about. But the new thing that that's a game changer is we created a company back around January, February, named Shush. And what we're doing is we're a true SaaS monetization layer for network authentication, mobile identity, specifically designed for the supply side. And we call the supply side the mobile network operators, right? So the mobile network operators provide the supply, the banks, the brands, et cetera, are your demand side. There's not a demand problem. There's a supply problem. With GSMA, Open Gateway, and Chimera and all this stuff, I like to say there's 100 operators that actually offer the service. It's more like 60, and there's about 1,600 mobile network operators out there that don't know what to do, don't have a platform, don't have the capital to build a platform and expose it. So we created Shush to actually provide that service to them. So very excited.
Perfect. And the timing's obviously great, and you're focused on probably the biggest use case in our industry. So perhaps you could talk about that kind of problem area in a bit more detail that your company solves. So the kind of mobile fraud piece and how that's disrupting the telecom ecosystem that we obviously are part of today.
Yeah, I don't think it's disrupting per se. I think it's actually enhancing. All right. So SMS was never designed for security, right? When two-factor first came out, I was back in the day, I was literally at, VeriSign at the time, and we had the dongles, and everybody kept losing the dongles, and they said, oh, well, everyone carries a mobile phone, send them the 5-digit code, right? And you type it in and be done with it. So it was never designed for security per se, what we're using it today. And I think what's happening is, the industry with Chimera and Open Gateway, et cetera, everybody's kind of like going, oh, telco APIs, oh, that's the next big thing, network slicing, MEC and QOD and all this stuff. But, yeah, great. When you eventually get there, when people want to use that. But the real thing is around mobile identity. The problem with the term mobile identity is everybody has their own definition. So we like to say we're a network authentication company providing, focused on the mobile identity attributes, right? And what's the big mobile identity attributes, right? Device, number verify, right? Well, everybody's doing number verify currently today by just pinging an HLR, and hopefully it gets through, and you're not supposed to be doing that, but they do it, right? Then you got silent authentication, which is truly the game changer because it actually verifies the device with the session, right? So, what session you on, what device is, and they marry the two together and said, yes, it's James, right? Or it's James's device at least, right? Where OTP is throw a 5-digit code over the fence and pray to God it gets to James. And then there's, SIM swap. And SIM swap is the true game changer. The regulators out there around the world are, saying you have to have a SIM swap solution because just take a look at what happened in the United States. Just in the last few months, a woman at Freedom Wireless loses $190,000 of her life savings. Gone. Because they did it in the middle of the night and she's asleep and the phone says SOS and she never notices it, right? Then the three biggest cryptocurrency fraud, $423 million. The three were done via SIM swap. We have a couple of articles on our website that we point these things out. And just not a few weeks ago, a woman on Verizon with Bank of America, literally got affected by SIM swap. And you're talking about, the regulators are fed up. The regulators are pushing the mobile network operators. A couple days ago, the mobile network operators needed to tell the FCC in the U.S. what are their plans. Well, we all know when the regulator gets involved, it's what's your process and then what's your technology. Well, so in the United States, per se, you got your big three already have it, right? So T-Mobile has a solution, AT&T has a solution, Verizon has a solution, but believe it or not, there are 60 plus still mobile operators in the United States. You got two examples, C Spire and US Cellular, right? But there's, First Cellular, Southern Illinois, or, Union Wireless. There's these little guys that don't have the capital to go build this monetization platform, don't have the resources, don't have the time. So that's where kind of like Shush comes in and says, okay, here you go. Here's a platform, no upfront cost. We do it all on a rev share, and you can get up. And this is what that's been resonating, right?
Great.
The GSMA is saying, open gateway, all this stuff, and it's taking forever. I can launch 30, I need to be careful here because every time I say a number, I talk to my chief product officer, who, by the way, built this at T-Mobile, a gentleman by the name of John Morrow, and the industry knows him, and he came on board here with us. And every time I talk to him, it's like, well, now we have 35 attributes. Now we have 37 attributes. Now we have 39 attributes that we can expose within 90 days. So from launch, from signature to launch in 90 days. So they're actually making money now and not making money, 5 years from now, based on, this industry that just takes forever to do something, right? So, I mean, look at RCS. It's 4 years and they're finally potentially here, right?
Well, fingers crossed, and the analyst reports are very positive about that. The branding for your company resonates as well, and Shush is either a big secret or clearly it's bringing something silent to authentication that
Exactly.
the mobile
Silent
operators will.
So that's it. It's silent authentication. So what's the when you type what's your password? It's like PW dash, right? So we got the PW, TLD, right? So it's like Shush silent password, right? Or silent authentication.
Perfect.
That's how we came up with it.
And mobile network operators, you mentioned obviously the US, who always embrace and are always some of the first to embrace obviously innovative new technology, especially when it protects their users. But you seeing global demand here, Eddie, as well?
Massive global demand. So it all started because prior to starting Shush, I was with Sekura, right? I was a regional CEO, and what happened was I was speaking to all these mobile network operators all over the world. So I was responsible for all the Americas and Asia Pacific, and I was speaking to all these network operators, and they were all saying the same thing. We want to do it. We have no idea how to do it. We don't have the resources to do it. We don't, they're literally building the thesis for me, right? And when I separated with Sekura because they needed to focus on what they needed to focus on for them to be successful, right? They had a huge opportunity with Western European markets, the Indian markets, and they weren't focused on they weren't focused on it. They had to pick their battles, and God love them and wish them nothing but success. I was sitting there going, I have a thesis. I think there's something here. So I reached out to a number of my mentors and started running the thesis through them and really kind of trimming the fat, just kind of really getting it focused. And I just so happened to speak to one of my mentors was a gentleman by the name of John Donovan. And I don't know if you know who he is, but John Donovan was the former CEO of AT&T. Well, he
Wow.
was a CTO, then became the CEO. And when John left AT&T in November of 2018, that was the last time AT&T was ranked the number one or the largest telecommunications company in the world. It hasn't held that position since he left. Now, John was my boss at a company called VeriSign. And he goes, how people used to go, how close are you to him? I go, well, he approved my expense report, so I tend to be pretty close to him. So I called him up and we had a long conversation and I said, hey, this is my thesis. This is what I'm looking to do. What do you think?
Mm.
And by the time we were done, he was like, go raise $30 million and own this space. This is absolutely an amazing idea. You found that hole in that missing piece within the ecosystem. I said, hey, how would you like to join my board? And he goes, I'm too busy with Lockheed Martin and Palo Alto Networks. And I was like, God, you're so
Wow.
lucky, right? So, great guy, gave me some great advice, great mentors, so between that and talking to other people and other mentors that I had in the industry that I look up to, they were all pushing me forward. But the biggest
Mm.
mentor I had is my wife, right? My wife literally doesn't, I'm an idiot, right? And this is one of the first times she actually said, you need to go do this. You really need to go do this. So I called my co-founder and I said, hey, I got this idea and I want you to help me bring it to realization. And then we incorporated in February. We literally started raising money. So we incorporated in February. I go to Mobile World Congress. I kind of accidentally announced the company at Mobile World Congress with Evan. Oh my God, just drew a blank on his name. Uh, uh, in his podcast, real quick interview. And I
Uh-huh.
literally was sitting there building the website on my mobile device because I wasn't expecting to launch. And then we officially started raising money in April, and we 2x'd
Mm.
it in 45 days.
Wow.
Literally 2x the raise in 45 days. We were completely blown away on how well we did with the raise, on how well we did with the valuation, and how well we're being
Mm.
received. So we have mobile network operators that have signed agreements. The announcements will be coming. We have signed partnership agreements. You're starting to see them being announced. Happy to say we have a partnership agreement with GTC that we're extremely excited about, working with Jose and Giovanni and Guillaume and yourself and the rest of the team at GTC, because some of the nicest comments I have literally gotten have been from Guillaume. Guillaume's like, you are fundamentally changing the mobile identity network authentication space because this is a product that the mobile network operators are needing. And here's a great example
Mm.
of that. Mobile network operators are always a challenge to deal with, right?
Yes.
So they always, have that, um, they're risk averse, and it's not the days of cowboys when they all used to be cowboys and just did anything, right? Now they're real businesses,
Mm.
right? So when we created the company, we created the product, and we created the service offering, we said,
Mm.
okay, how do I avoid procurement, right? Because that's crazy, How do I avoid, these different challenges? And we designed a solution to get around all those challenges. It's a
Mm.
rev share, no upfront cost. It sits behind the trusted domain of the carrier. It's in any cloud solution. It's all the things that makes network security and privacy and legal and even network. Um, we try to limit the no, or we try to limit at least the challenges that they will have internally. And
Mhm.
that's why when we put this team together, like we brought in John Morrow, this guy literally came up with the inception of T-Mobile USA,
Mm.
built the product, launched the product, created the pricing, created all the pieces, got legal, got privacy, got network security.
Mhm.
He's been through it all. So having him as part of this senior management team, is just been a godsend, right? So he speaks the language that they have, and then bringing on recent queries from TeleSign, right? Worked very closely with Guillaume. From the demand side, understanding what the demand partners need to, communicate into the supply side, right? So having those two guys truly makes my life easy. Right? We're honestly blessed.
So you've got a really exciting time in terms of you're hitting the market at the right time. You've got a great team together.
Yep.
How do you see this kind of 5 years out in terms of the impact that this is going to have, Eddie?
Well, I don't believe anything that comes out of any analyst company, right? Because they're always wrong. However, they just have to be slightly right. Because if you remember a couple of years ago, the GSMA this is 10x OTP. So if OTP is 19 billion today, right? Just OTP. I'm not talking about the whole A2P market. I'm just talking about OTP is a $19 billion business. And they're saying it's 10x. So we're now at 190 billion. Okay. That's not a bad market, TAM, right? Then McKinsey comes out and says it's a $300 billion market. Okay, that's not too bad. I'll take that. And then, what was it? A few weeks ago, Juniper, right? 900 billion. Okay, I'll take a piece of that, right? So, where are we in 5 years? It's definitely a $100 billion market. I truly, honestly think this is a $100 billion market. And I think, being able to deliver to the mobile network operators, like I said, there's, roughly, let's say 1,500 mobile network operators that don't have anything, and giving them the ability to launch within 90 days, giving them the ability to launch. There's not a demand problem. The demand's there, right? Those attributes, not the attributes, but the API northbound, southbound have already been built. Right, so they're waterfalling. So if you're Twilio or Infobip or Cinch or whomever, you already say, okay, does this carrier support mobile identity? Does this bank want mobile identity attributes? Okay, it's there. Now, if the brand doesn't support it, or not the brand, I'm sorry, if the mobile operator doesn't support it, we waterfall back to SMS, right? Because it's moving today, and this is the scary part. So I think Mobile Square, we all know Nick, and Nick does an amazing job trying to show what's going on in the industry, right? 2023 it was down, OTP was down 3%. In 2024 they're projecting 7%. I'm talking to mobile operators now that are seeing 30% drop-offs.
Wow.
In OTP. Because here's what's happening, and Nick said it during Mobile World Congress, they're moving. Right now, these brands are going to OTT, right? The WhatsApps, I'm looking at ads now for WhatsApp OTT, right? But in some markets, it's more expensive than SMS. Okay, but they're using the OTT apps. They're using third-party verification, right? So Google Verify, Microsoft Authenticator, et cetera, which the usability, right? The customer experience is horrible, right? We have all done it. You had to jump into, your thing. You have to get the code quick enough so you can stick it in the thing so it doesn't automatically reset, and then you're jumping back and forth between. So the user experience is horrible. And for the love of God, they're using email. I have gotten more email OTP messages over the last few months than I ever got before in my life, right? Well, the third is the mobile identity attributes. Oh, I'm sorry, the fourth is the mobile identity attributes. And if it can offset some of the money that they're currently losing and then eventually overtake the money that they have lost, and it's more secure, more people want to use it, the regulators are kind of pushing it forward, the brands are requesting it, you're starting to see that four-leg stool being truly built. So you're losing money, or the money or the revenue is declining on, let's say, OTP, but it's increasing both on A2P marketing and business messaging, as well as mobile identity attributes. So the carriers are truly in the ecosystem, and this is one solution that no one can take away from the mobile carriers. You can't go around them, especially on SIM swap.
Uh-huh.
Apple doesn't have it, Google doesn't have it, nobody has it but the mobile network operator.
Perfect. So the sweet spot is where we like it, Eddie. And clearly for GTC, we are vested in this area. You mentioned Guillaume, obviously our acquisition of Ufti, the business he
Yep,
founded, and his experience setting up mobile identity for TeleSign means it's the perfect meeting, really, Shush coming together with GTC.
that's right.
Perhaps you could talk a bit about kind of the value that we want to add to the ecosystem.
So I was the former president of Tyntec, and my first meeting I ever had at Tyntec was with Jose.
There you go.
My first meeting.
Uh-huh.
The reason, so Tyntec bought the assets from Iris Wireless, and I introduced Guillaume to the guys who owned the not Guillaume, Giovanni, to the guys who owned those assets. Right
Uh-huh.
at my first event for a previous company, I was in Amsterdam, and I know Giovanni, and I said, "Hey, is Dawson still interested in getting into the United States? I can introduce him to somebody, right?"
Uh-huh.
So, so it's like an incestuous, like, really, it's a small world, right?
Mm.
And, watching what Jose has done with GTC over the years and the guidance he's been given to with the team he's put together to the industry just made sense, right? Especially with the acquisition of Guillaume's company,
Mm.
and truly focused on the mobile identity space as well as other things that you guys do. It just made sense because you're looked at as the thought leaders, right?
Mm.
And the experts, and these mobile network operators are coming to you and saying, "Hey, what do we do? What's the plan? Like, how do I get from, hey, I think I want to do mobile identity, to, hey, these are 36 attributes that are now exposed, and here's your pricing," right? So
Mm.
being able to do that, and then partnering with a company such as Shush to deliver those solutions, because you're, again, the experts telling the mobile network operators, or not telling, suggesting and providing guidance to the mobile network operators to say, "Hey, you can look at this company, and this company, and this
Mm.
is what we recommend that you should be doing." It's just it's the correct partnership because we believe we have the best solution out there.
Uh-huh. Perfect. And I thought I knew Jose and Giovanni and Guillaume well, but clearly, Eddie, you can tell me some secrets away from this call. Um,
Yeah, all right, no problem.
and we're delighted, obviously, by the partnership. And we always ask the business up front, and then we get to the personal. So we're getting to that
Mhm.
point now. And
Okay.
it's really nice that you mentioned your wife up front and your
Mhm.
family. But I understand you have quite successful siblings as well, Eddie.
Uh, yeah, wow. Yeah. So I have three children, two grandkids. My grandkids are my favorite, and I keep telling my kids that. So, I
Great.
got to keep them on their toes. Um, yeah, no. So my daughter is just an amazing, amazing young woman. She's finishing up her master's degree in neuroscience,
Wow.
and now she tells me, "Dad, you can't do this X, Y, Z." And I went, "How do you know?" And she goes, "I am literally a neuroscientist." And she's going to med school, so I got a brain doctor, and then my
Uh-huh.
son is my middle boy is an aerospace engineer,
Mm.
and I'm actually going to his presentation because they're designing a space plane. So I have a rocket scientist and a brain surgeon, as I like to say. They have my wife's brains, not mine. They're a whole lot smarter than me. And then my oldest boy is in the film industry and very, very successful. He One of his big successes is, if you saw the television show Fallout that's on Amazon,
Uh-huh.
he did all the sets. So all that set design, everything you're seeing on camera, my son built and designed And well, he didn't design it. There was a person who did the designing, but he took that vision of what the video game was, and from this the set designer, the designer that and built all that. So everything you see on camera, my son was did it. It was his team.
Mm.
And the other claim to fame, and I said this a little earlier, my other claim to fame is in episode 7, they're in a classroom, and my daughter built that. My daughter wanted something really interesting on her resume for med school, and my son brought her on to actually work on the television show. In episode 7, she did the entire classroom. And on the
Wow.
wall, if you look on the wall, there's all this artwork, and that's all my daughter's artwork. Like, she literally drew all that stuff to put on the wall to make it look like a classroom. And I told my daughter one day, I go, forever, you're immortalized in one of the biggest television shows ever made. I mean, I think Amazon said it was like $250 million they spent on the first series, right? You're immortalized in episode 7. So I got my kids are pretty amazing. I'm really blessed on how well they have come into their own and become their own individual and extremely accomplished. So some really, really good stuff. Again, I just knock on wood every day, right? Because it's they're good kids, really good kids.
And that's us thinking that you were passionate when you were talking about Shush, but I think your grandchildren and your children clearly, as
Oh,
they should be.
my grandchildren rock. They are truly my grandchildren, and my dog are my favorite things right now.
There we go. And it wouldn't be right for us not to ask this final question of
Mhm,
Eddie, which is you know the industry, you know everyone in it.
mhm,
Talk us
mhm.
through one of probably your best stories
Oh
to
God!
finish us, to
All
close
right,
us out.
so here is how long I've been in this industry. This will
Mm.
sum it up to you in a nutshell. Back in 1998, I worked for a company called Giant Bear. Okay.
Mhm.
And we were offering dial digit triggers, right? You hit pound pound and a number, and what it would do, it would pull your content off the internet. So let's say pound pound one, it
Uh-huh.
would then pull your stock quotes off your Yahoo stock. This way you didn't have to do all that. This was when they were first putting in mobile originating type of services. So one
Mm.
weekend I was playing around with the system, and I sent a message from a CDMA network, which was Centennial, Puerto Rico,
Uh-huh.
to PowerTel, which is a GSM network in the US. And we were connected to both of them. So basically created intercarrier SMS. This is 1998. Intercarrier SMS between two disparaging networks. Now,
Mhm.
at that same time, there were guys like Cormac Long, who was writing SMPP 1.0, right?
Uh-huh.
And I know Cormac, and he's a great friend. Then there was guys like Bill Dudley, who was at CSG, kind of doing the same thing, and guys like Dan Lai at where was he at Airtel, right in California, doing it. So there was like 4 or 5 of us all around the same time doing the exact same thing, doing cross carrier P2P messaging, right? So
Mhm. Amazing.
I walked into my staff meeting Monday morning, and I said, hey, guess what I did this weekend? I sent a message from one carrier to another carrier, one CDMA and one GSM. And they go,
Mhm.
has this ever been done before? And I go, I don't think so. I said, right now, SMS is, you're an island amongst yourself, right? At AT&T to AT&T, you couldn't go outside the network. So my head of marketing goes, we should do a press release about it. And I literally said, nah, no one's ever going to use it. I just, So don't ever take stock advice from me, and don't ever take what people are going to do advice from me, because I said no one's ever going to use it. Well, it's put my daughter through med school. I've been involved in it since 1998. I worked at VeriSign. We were the biggest intercarrier P2P. I helped run that business for a long time. I was executive over at Iris Wireless. We were the largest ISVs in the world. I was the president of Tyntec. We were not, so I've always been involved in it, and it's really like defined my kind of life. So when the same people, like Bill Dudley and Dan Lai and Chris Wright. I can't forget Chris Wright, right? Chris Wright and others. We were all kind of driving a lot of this what people are using today. Like, I remember, another quick story. Bill, Dudley calling me up and saying we want to Verizon wants to send a message from their VoIP service to SMS. I said, well, we can't because the contracts say only a 10-digit mobile number. Well, we literally forced the industry to accept any 10-digit phone number, which then created new net. Well, net number was around, but allowed net number to build upon their eSPIDs. So created 10DLC, which is now a mess. But it was Bill Dudley, myself, Chris Wright, Dan Lai, literally sitting in a room in Vegas agreeing to this, changing the peering agreements to allow it to, so Twilio wouldn't be in business today. This was a catalyst behind it. We sit back and we laugh that it was five guys sitting in a room in Vegas during CTIA that agreed to this because some guy at Verizon asked us to do it. And that's how this industry was created. So it's funny, you sit around and you hear, these sometimes so-called experts, and you're like, it doesn't work that way. And they're like, why? I go, well, Bill Dudley wrote that part of or Chris Wright did this, or Dan Lai did this, or I did that, or John Lauer did this, or, these are the guys who literally were the catalyst for what this industry became. So it's kind of like, you sit back and you kind of giggle a lot.
And I think that's almost the perfect story to end on, because I know our listeners will want to hear more. But Eddie, it's been a real true pleasure talking to you. And I feel sorry for our marketing team that's going to have to summarize this into the key points, because there's been so much. So thank you so much. And,
thank you, James, and thank you to the rest of the team, and thank you for this partnership. And we're truly, truly excited about it.
Fantastic. Okay. With that, let's call the close, and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.